Welcome all to our last session of today. It's the day of Izmir, Turkey, the partner of News and Map project. We had a wonderful, interesting session this morning with most of you joining. And now we continue with Associate Professor Paolo Susanni, who is also a teacher in the music department at Yaşar University in Izmir, Turkey. He's a native of Italy, being lived in many places and studied in Italy and South Africa and the US. And after his doctorate degree in piano performance, he's been an academician in many fields. And this is not only piano, but specifically his interest goes into 20th century music analysis and specifically Bela Bartok. And he has various books on these subjects. And then he is also the author of this European project called Omega, which we can share with you the details later on entrepreneurship for music and art students. And the project developed a novel course module to teach young musicians and artists entrepreneurial skills. So I'm very, very happy to present you his interesting presentation on cooperative learning and technology, which was developed for this News and Map project. And the details go, I think the study examines a little bit of how a cooperative learning model and relevant technological resources are used to create music startups. But I won't be speaking any further, and I will give the floor to Paolo. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Is the audio good? Everything is good, great. I just am going to share my screen. Hold on a minute. Can everybody see it?
Okay, yes.
Everything is good? Excellent.
Paolo,
Yes.
half of the screen there is a blue thing that I see. Does everybody see it like that?
Yeah, there is a strange blue square
like
on the right. So
it's covering a little bit of the slideshow on the right-hand side. But
that's because probably you guys are there. If I do this, well, oh, I see what you mean. Oh. How about now?
Now it's in the middle. Now it moves around the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot do anything about that.
Okay.
Move it up, move it up, up.
Okay.
You can push it up. No.
How about down?
Oh, perfect.
A little better, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to tell everybody, first of all, I wanted to thank Rafaela Longo for pushing me in this direction. For me, this has been a really big adventure because there were some things that I knew, some things that I had no idea about. And in actually doing the study, I learned how to do all of these things. The whole idea is to see whether we could equip our students with the knowledge and skills to be able to set up their own music companies. So I'm going to basically give you two definitions at the beginning. I'll show you what that all means, and then I'll show you how how cooperative learning works, how music startups, what they are, and what technology we can use to do them. The best place to start, now I can't see this, hold on. Hold on now, oh great. Okay, so it's best that we understand what actually happened so that we see where we are today. Everything started after World War II, where there was a huge explosion of two things. One, there was a huge population explosion where we went from 2.5 billion people to today 7.5 billion people. So that is expanding. And together with that came a huge explosion of credit. that actually, and for that, we have to remember two dates. In 1944, there was an agreement where it was called the Bretton Woods Agreement, where the dollar actually became the world currency and replaced the sterling. So there is already a global currency. It's called the dollar. Everything you have to do is with the dollar. But at that point, the dollar was actually backed by gold. And then in 1971, Richard Nixon took off the gold standard, which allowed central banks around the world to start creating credit out of the blue. It was no longer based on gold. It was not based on anything else. So that they created such a huge amount of credit that we have actually spent our way into the future. That's why today they talk about trillions of debt. And we are beginning to feel that pinch now. The pinch actually happened in 2008, where the foundations of the global economic system started to shake and it actually came to a halt. And we have actually never recovered from that, despite everybody's best attempts. All that has actually happened is that they just keep printing more and more money. But that doesn't help, because it is issued as debt, and therefore you always have to pay back more than is issued. So what actually happens in the period of expansion, you have an expansion of everything. You have an expansion of money, you have and because of that, you have an expansion of the labor market. In 2008, that all came to a halt. And since then, we've stagnated. And as I will show, we're actually going worse. What this COVID epidemic has done is actually show in a more drastic way what is happening. So after 2008, we had massive financial losses and a severe contraction of the labor market. And thus, jobs just became much harder to find, not just for music, but for absolutely everybody. Music, if we're talking about the arts sector, music was perhaps the hardest hit. As you can see from the little graph, from the little table that I have underneath here, and this is a 2014, I couldn't find anything more recent. It showed that the unemployment rate among musicians went from 5% to 9.1%, and that was in 2013. So musicians, more than all the others, actually had to start finding secondary sources of income, because there was a loss of jobs, and so you had to make money in some other way. And this forced them to go into what everybody likes to call the gig economy, like it's a really wonderful thing, but it really isn't, because you have to diversify in order to make a living wage. So this gig economy expanded the vision of what it means to be a musician. So it's no longer just the one job that you used to be able to do. Now you have to do more than that. This is the gig economy as we have the latest data from this chart actually shows, if you see on the right-hand side, the single jobs, in other words, the jobs that we traditionally think of, are now in the minority. So all of us, for example, working at universities that have a full-time job are extremely lucky. But this on the right-hand side is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And what is actually increasing are the bubbles that you see, the gray bubbles that you see on the left-hand side. The middle one shows you that 41% of the musicians employed are now having to hold multiple music-related and arts jobs. 11% hold multiple arts-related jobs and multiple non-arts related jobs. And the last one on the left, which is 12%, hold one arts-related job and multiple non-arts related jobs. So you can see that this left-hand side of this diagram is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So those of us who have traditional one jobs that you can stay in for a long period of time is disappearing. Why? Because everything is contracting. Orchestras are closing down. Just everything is becoming a lot more difficult. So this is the economic side of what is actually happening. What also actually happens is the advent of the internet. The internet has both good parts and bad parts. The good parts is this. The internet brought decentralization, and it allowed for power to be distributed more evenly in all the industries, including the music industry. So what actually happened is that musicians gained more independence and started relying less on centralized institutions, because those centralized institutions could no longer hire as many people as they did before. And therefore, the musicians themselves could determine their future, both artistic, intellectual, and money-wise. So they acquired sovereignty and power. Of course, what that came is that being responsible for your own career, you're also responsible for where does your money come from? What do you do now that you can't rely on that one job that you used to be able to rely on? This situation created the internet, actually created career types that never existed before and do not fit in the traditional mold that we think of. When we think of, okay, I'm going to practice the piano, and then I'm going to teach at a university, or I'm going to become a recording artist, or I'm going to do all the things that we used to think of. Now you can do many more things. Of course, you have to learn how to do them. The proliferation of technology, in other words, how technology has expanded and taken over, has had a big influence on the lives of musicians. It has offered many, many solutions, and it's created a lot of opportunities that did not exist before, both in terms of careers, goods, and services. However, a lot of us that think in a traditional way have not stayed up with these developments. The massive proliferation was made possible by scaling. The one thing that the internet has done is that if you have something, once upon a time, to actually distribute it around the world was a huge enterprise in itself. Now, if you want to sell something, whether you want to sell it in your own hometown or have it sent to another continent, is extremely easy. All you have to do is get it onto the internet through a whole bunch of things, processes, and you can reach the whole world. That kind of scaling was never available to humanity before. The internet has brought us scaling. You can just reach millions of people doing very, very little. Before, that was not possible. So scaling is extremely important. I just put this fellow, I correspond with him every now and then because Earmaster, I teach solfege, and Earmaster is one of my favorite apps. It's now an app, it's in its 7th iteration. But I wanted to read to you the Earmaster company mission statement so that it gives you an idea. Being musicians ourselves, our mission is to develop high quality software and to provide musicians of all horizons with the most interactive and efficient ear training tool. What drives our company is a passion for music in all its shapes and colors. All of our employees are musicians and avid users of Earmasters on a personal basis. So this actually shows you that you can branch off, and that's exactly what he did. You can branch off and create something that didn't exist at all. This is what radical innovation was that Chara talked about this morning. In the musical field, this is happening more and more and at an incredible rate. So that gives you an idea of what's happening. What did institutions do in order to try and keep up with this? they started teaching entrepreneurship studies. I don't know how many of you are teaching in the various conservatories and universities, but in the little quote over here, by 2013, entrepreneurship courses of varying efficacy were being taught in almost all of Europe. For the most part, these courses were offered in non-music departments, as entrepreneurship is most associated with business. However, by 2018, a large number of university music departments, as well as music conservatories, were offering entrepreneurship studies to their students on both the undergraduate and graduate levels. How the basic structure of entrepreneurship, as is taught to music students and art students in general, is that you have subjects that are broken up into two broad categories. There are the hard skills, and those are the subjects that can be taught from theoretical models. It can be business, legal issues, bookkeeping, advertising, fundraising, anything that has a theory behind it and can be learned from an abstract theoretical model. The opposite side of that are the soft skills, those that are not taught on a purely theoretical basis, but closer to human social attributes, such as collaboration, negotiation, and leadership. I just mentioned a few because in different schools, they, I don't want to say manipulate, but they tailor their choice of subjects. There are, however, these two categories of subjects. And fundamental to both of these, where it's taught in nearly all entrepreneurship classes, is project management, which is understood as being a mixture of both hard skills, where you actually have to know some things theoretically, as well as soft skills. And those are the attributes that a person has in order to be able to make the running of a project smooth and successful. So that's what was done in higher education to try and keep up with this diversification of what it means to be a musician. This is where I want to give our two main definitions, because what we are trying to figure out is it possible to teach students to teach themselves how to do something? And the best model that people have come up with is called cooperative learning. So cooperative learning methods, models, and instructional procedures organize students to work in groups towards a common cooperative learning goal or outcome, or share a common problem or task in such a way that they can only succeed in completing the work through behavior that demonstrates independence while holding individual contributions and efforts accountable. So in this model of learning, what you are doing is you are having a group effort, but the individual is just important as the group. That's the basic understanding of what cooperative learning is. There are all kinds of variations on this thing, but as a whole, this is a really good definition. So there are three main aspects. Is that the first being that the learning is achieved by the group. This means that there should be a type of interdependence in that group that assures learning success of the group. Each member of the group should contribute equally, because this will determine if the group succeeds or fails. In this case, group success depends on the contributions of its constituent members. So you see that the group and the individual are really the same thing. They are inextricable. You cannot take them, you cannot subdivide them. The second is a question of individual and group accountability. This represents expectations placed on each of the two components, the individual and the group, and is a prerequisite that should be clearly explained so that each group member understands both personal and collective responsibility. The third, and perhaps most vital aspect, is that of teamwork. And this is where, for example, project management is so important, because it relies entirely on teamwork. While most people have participated in some form of activity in the course of their life, for example, I don't know if you played a team sport, water polo, basketball, whatever, team skills are required to achieve a well-functioning unit, and that should be taught. This aspect is closely related to the principle of interdependence, in that the team skills either facilitate or hinder interdependence. So those are the three main aspects of learning, of this cooperative learning. What is a music startup? It's a new term, but as a concept, it has existed way before they came up with the terminology. But it has some specific, let's say, characteristics. A music startup is a company that provides a service or product specifically catered for those in the music industry. So far, that has been the general, let's say, the general outlook. The main characteristics of these companies are A, that they are created by a small group of individuals who each contribute their expertise. This goes directly back to our small cooperative learning group. They rely heavily on collaboration and cooperation of their founding members. So their founding members, again, you can equate to our small learning groups. They are technology and social media based companies. And I'll give you the two examples and I'll explain what they do. And they exist and operate almost exclusively on the internet. These are the first two that I put in my study, but this is just to show you how different these companies can be, because they supply services and products that sometimes have absolutely nothing to do with each other. I got these and more from the most successful European startup groups. You can go to the websites and find them. So Amuse, the first one, it furnishes a free of charge distribution services on a platform that allows unknown musical talents to showcase their music online. While providing this service, the company monitors the consumption of said music, in other words, the music that the person creates, with the aim of scouting nascent talent. In other words, while they provide a platform for you to showcase your music, they are also looking for the super talented people as well. They provide iPhone and Android apps, because these run on apps, that allow participating musicians to track their own progress and provide real-time support via a support team. They are present on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. They raised 15.5 million from different venture capitalists, and they collaborate very tightly with Wired, Billboard, and Forbes magazine. Their founding members are only 5. They had only 5 founding members. Endel is a completely different thing. What Endel does is that they provide a sound ecosystem. I don't think anybody has ever heard of that. So what it is on a cross-platform, it creates sonic environments that promote concentration, focus, relaxation, and sleep and reduce stress. These soundscapes, in other words, how they choose the kind of sound that you receive, is based on environmental things such as temperature, in other words, how cold or how hot it is, the time of day. They also rely on, they actually read your body signals to adapt their sound or soundscapes or music, whatever you want to call it, to adapt to your day. And the iOS app at this point is available only with Apple. It delivers the sonicScape and is connected to devices such as desktop, cars, smart home, sound system, mobiles, wearables, which are earphones, voice assistants such as Amazon's Alexa. So what that means is that they connect, if you so desire, they connect your entire life from the moment you go to sleep to the moment you wake up, if you so wish, so that you can get up from your bed, switch on your sound system, have it playing, go to the next room, it's still playing because maybe your computer is on, and you go to the kitchen and your refrigerators that now also have speakers in them is also playing it. You then go to your car, you switch that on, and that's also playing. If you like that sort of thing, it sounds crazy, but there are many people who like that. So they are partnered with Apple, Twitch, and Amazon. They have only 4 founding members. So as you can see, both of these, the two of them supply completely different things that have nothing to do with each other. And there are so many more of these companies that provide all kinds of other things. So what I did was I took the top 5 and I deconstructed them to understand how they were actually made and what they have in common. So first and foremost, as I've mentioned, each and all of these companies were created by a small number of founders. The founding members are most often from entirely different fields of specializations that include business, banking, law, and technology. Only a very small portion of these are musicians and artists. I want to make a small parenthesis here. And what they are basically based on is not cooperative learning, but collaborative learning. In other words, each of them is a specialist in something and has something to contribute. They bring it all together and they create the company because of their expertise. However, you will see that when we can use cooperative learning to make our students, and in this case, our professors, experts, so that we can teach ourselves and teach our students to teach themselves how to do this. All the companies went through an establishment process as well as rounds of fundraising. That's, for example, iHeartSkill to raise funds. Most have strong ties to financial institutions that offer advice, finance, and promotion. Those are hard skills and soft skills. All have a strong presence on the internet for both networking and promotion, as well as for the offering of their services. All collaborate with a wide variety of media and celebrities to increase their presence and relevance in the space. The example I like to give of this, and this brings it closer to home, there is one of these companies is called Music Traveler. Music Traveler was founded by Vladimir Igudesman, which you might know from the Igudesman and Jew duo, and John Malkovich. And the two of them got together and they obviously networked with other people, and they created this platform. It's also an internet platform that you can book practice venues, recording studios, concert halls via apps. In other words, you become part of this community. They created what I like to call an Airbnb for musicians. So that if you go to some city that you've never been before and you desperately need a practice space, you pay a fee, you get it. So you don't have to worry about booking stuff anymore. You don't have to worry about any of those things anymore. So you can see that the responsibility, you no longer need an agent to do that work for you. You can do that from the comfort of your own home. So that's one of the things that has changed so drastically. So from this list of characteristics, one can choose which hard and soft skills one thinks necessary to learn based on the abilities and affinities of the cooperative learning group members. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you decide to create this cooperative group, you may find that, because I'm sure most of you know your students pretty well, you will know what each one of them is good at. Even though they may not be expert at something, you know that they have already some certain soft skills, which they are good. Some of them are leaders, some of them are not. Some of them can follow orders, some of them can't. Some actually have computer skills that others don't have. So you can mold your program based on your knowledge of the students and what their abilities and their characteristics are. So here we go. Do musicians make good candidates for cooperative learning models? Yes, the answer is just plain yes. Of all professions, music is perhaps one of the few where cooperation is quintessential. I don't think I need to say that to you. Cooperation is fundamental for musical groups, all the way from large ones, such as orchestras, choirs, to small ones, such as chamber music ensembles and duos. Most musicians possess many of the attributes that allow them to collaborate in groups, while many others have skills that allow them to have multifaceted careers, as greater portions of musicians today perform, arrange, teach, write, and have alternative employment. I'm sure that if you ask any of your students, that is usually the case. So I would actually go as far as to say that musicians are very often happy to give up their own. I know that we are all prima donnas in many ways, but if we have to play in a quartet together, sometimes we hate each other, but we love the music so much that we do it anyway. So we are definitely good collaborators. The one drawback is this, that while many of us and many of our students have all the soft skills necessary, they lack knowledge of many hard skills. But that has been taken pretty much care of, as you will see as I go along, by technology. It's no longer really a problem. How can I say this? Like I said, when I started out this doing this study, it was approximately, when did I start? In March, somewhere around in March. I actually taught myself how to do many things that I had no idea about. But what you see now is something which is phenomenal, because you think to yourself, oh my goodness, how am I going to start anything without any knowledge of computers? So here is a company, it's called AppyPie. It's a no-code development platform. What does that mean? It means you have to have zero knowledge of coding, so you don't have to be an expert in anything. And what you can do with this platform is you can create apps, mobile apps, you can create websites, you can automate tasks, you can create chat boxes, and you can create all kinds of graphics by yourself with their help, and you don't need to know anything about computers. It's absolutely phenomenal because it allows basically anyone with very limited computer skills to be able to do this. Now, if you think about the fact that you have mobile apps, website design, task automation, chatbox, and graphics all in one, that takes care of most of the presentation of your business online, because then it becomes an automated thing that once you've developed it, it's done. Then all you have to worry about is spreading the good news. Gartner, which is shall I say, not an approval service, but a review service, a very strict review service, has actually said by 2024, which is only, what, 3 years away? 4 years away? Okay. No-code application development will be responsible for more than 65% of application development activity. So hopefully by 2024, it's already available. You don't need to know anything in order to create your complete online business. Now, if you look underneath, because they didn't give the pricing, Your basic pricing is this. Underneath it says your basic, not the free model. The free model, you can do certain things. For example, with the free model, you can design an app. You can't really do all the other stuff. But if you're willing to pay $18 a month or $36 a month, in a couple of months, you can, if you decide to spend $72, you can actually create your own business without any particular expertise in any of this stuff. So this was just an example to show how far technology has come along to allow any lay person to be able to do this. So, how can we create our groups? Our groups, when we want to have them form, in the literature, they basically give three models. The first one is proximity based. In other words, you can have people sitting in your class, and all you do is divide them off into little groups of 4 or 5 randomly. You can just go from left to right or back to front. It doesn't really matter. The problems with this is that in your classes, I'm sure, students who are friends always sit next to each other. So we all get groups of friends. Not necessarily, maybe they are all groups of friends, but they don't necessarily have enough diversification of abilities and skills to be able to create a group. But that is the one good thing about that is that they'll be friends. They'll collaborate very, very easily. The second model is created by the students themselves. This model almost always assures great interaction within the group, but can lead to students not having been selected because they are not part of any pre-existing group or circle of friends. It may also happen that the group member all have the same traits and end up lacking in others. In other words, it can happen that all your, in this model, all your guys are violin players. And what you actually need to have a real cooperative learning model, you need 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. I'm always going back to the quartet because it's the easiest thing to go to. But if you have 4 violinists sitting together, you're going to get really good violin music and not much else. The last one is perhaps the most effective one, and that is based on the division of labor. And this ensures that whatever tasks you have to give them, you can just give it to them without really having them discuss about whether they can or can't do them, although you've chosen them because you've pre-thought this out and you've put them so that they are all different, and therefore you can give them a workload that is distributed. The only problem with this model, of course, is that you may end up with people that don't like each other. But if it is in their best interest to create a startup and to have a common purpose, maybe they can work around that. This is a more complex and time-consuming method. The assigned group model tends to be the most successful. This has come after many years of study, especially when the instructor knows his students well, which most of us do, because we are very lucky in music that a lot of our groups are small. This circumstance is commonplace in music departments and conservatories because when the lessons are not on a one-by-one basis, music class sizes tend to be small. Most teacher-student familiarity is inevitable. So being music teachers and having music students is a huge plus for this system of learning. How can you give them, how can you actually create the groups? You can create the groups in different ways. This first model is called the jigsaw model. What you have on the right-hand side where it says task group, that is your first group, the first group that you form, where each of them is different, right? Now, if you have multiple little groups, what you can do is you can take all the number ones and put them in a focus group, the ones that you see on the left-hand side. And they all discuss one thing and become specialist in one thing. 2, you put all the 2s together, they discuss one thing. The 3s together, they discuss one thing. The 4s together, they discuss one thing. Then what happens is they go back to their groups, and they, each number, becomes the specialist of a particular subject. And they share that with the group so that the rest of the group learns that subject or learns to perform that task. So what you do is you have your group, you break the group up into expert groups who then go back to their original group and share the information. This is really the best when it comes to learning new things, and especially good for hard skills. Really very good. The second model is called the think, pair, share. You still have your group of 1, 2, 3, 4, but what you do is you split them up into partners. You put 1 and 2 together. You give them a question that they then discuss, which is the think is the part where you actually have the question. The question is posed. The student thinks about it. Then they get into pairs and they discuss and they refine what it is that they're thinking. So in a funny kind of way, the pairs become specialized in that thing, but it has allowed them to swap information, swap ideas. It's not just a single person that comes back with his idea of something. It is somebody who has thought about it, has then contrasted it with somebody else, and then a refined product is brought to the end part, which is the share. As I said here, this is very, very good for broadening, supplementation, refinement, and verification, which is offered by the discussion in the single and double pairs. As you can see, you start out with 1, it becomes 2, then it becomes 4. So as you go along, the knowledge becomes more and more and more and more and more refined. So this is the think, pair, share method. The last method is not very successful in terms of knowledge, but is really very successful in solving problems, because it's a kind of democracy. What actually happens is that you give them a concept and you give them certain answers. Immediately, they will give a response, which may be true and may not be true, right? Then what actually happens is they have a discussion, and then they go again and they re-vote on something, on the question that you posed to them, so that then they can come up with a better solution. So for example, if you give them a question, do you think we need to finish this task next week or the week after? They come in, they give their replies, then they talk about it, and then they realize, hey, wait a minute, this is not really the thing. So they vote again. It's like voting. So that helps with all, it helps with confirmation of something, and it becomes accepted by the whole group. In other words, it dissolves any tension or any differences, because then everybody can see that they decide, okay, it's better for us to finish it in 2 weeks than in 1 week. So they come to that consensus, and then you move on. So as you can see, these 3 systems can be used for very different things. And you can use all of these systems in the cooperative learning setup that you want. I have here a completely made up, I made this up. I don't know why I put Tom Petty as the instructor, but anyway, he's a famous rock musician. The most important thing is that your students are always informed as to what you are doing. And this means you have to make a detailed plan for every single lesson. So as you see, what I did here was I just made up something. So we decided that we were going to, in one class, tackle social media advertising. Then the topic within social media advertising, and that is setting up a website advertising on social media platforms. You have to explain why it is important. And then you say it's a key component in any startup company because it allows for promotion of the product and brand using the network effect. The network effect is what I first termed scalability. What are the guiding standards? You have to tell them exactly what the value of their information is going to be. In other words, the quality and mode of dissemination should be of the highest possible quality. The clarification of any point should occur at the time a question arises, so that there is always exchange. There is continuous exchange in these groups. What are they going to use? They're going to do a PowerPoint presentation. They're going to use handouts that you might have given them and the readings that you might have emailed to them prior. What are the learning objectives? How to set up advertising on the major social platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and WeChat. For this one, you may decide the best thing is to use the jigsaw method. So I will, as a teacher, Mr. Petty, will share the expertise gained from his specialist group. The other members are responsible for listening intently and asking questions that arise. In other words, I will give them something to read. I'll break them off into their specialist groups. I can either teach them that, or I can ask them to go and find that information themselves, because that's a task that we're wanting to do. So you're also going to be looking at interpersonal skills, the affirmation of the work done by the presenter, by the audience, inclusive manner of clarification by the presenter. Always communication. This whole system relies on effective communication. Then you tell them, I'm going to assess you on your understanding. So it will be done during the class itself. And the assessment of learning, you might want to afterwards say, I want to finish task at the end of this lesson or by the end of next week, whatever that you choose to, whatever you choose to give them to do. Now, the opposite side of this is the choice of cooperative learning educator. Who's going to teach this? So the traditional models, in traditional models, the teacher normally has the expert knowledge of a particular subject or subjects, and his or her aim is to impart that knowledge to the students. The sequence of delivery, the lesson content is divided up into prescribed portions of time. It is usually contained in the syllabus. We all know that. The manner of teaching style depends entirely upon the teacher. That is why you are in the luck of the draw. When you go into a class, when we were all at school, you say, oh, I really love my biology teacher and my math teacher. I hate my history teacher. I can't stand my Latin teacher, so forth and so on. Because as a student, you have no say as to what your teacher does. It's your teacher that teaches. However, in this system, the teacher transmits knowledge and the students receive and process it. That's all that happens. Teacher-student interaction normally occurs only when the when the students need clarification or when disciplinary issues arise. You all know that also. Even in these two circumstances, all communications start and end with the teacher. He or she is the centralized leader of the class. We all know that, we all went to school. The teacher is the end all and be all of our education because he teaches us, he tests us, he quizzes us, he whacks us, everything. He or she is in charge of everything. The teacher's role in cooperative learning, in the cooperative learning environment, is more as a guide and mentor rather than as a subject expert. It stands to reason that the educator who is going to guide the cooperative learning group should possess the attributes of a good mentor. So now we're talking more about what are your abilities as a mentor. So what do? They set challenges. They foster professional development by installing a sense of accomplishment. They are accepting of new perspectives and ideas, and most of all, they lead by example. It is obviously good if you have some expert knowledge in something. But as we get through this, you're beginning to get the idea. Just going back to that AppyPie platform, you can actually learn how to use AppyPie. Then you can actually teach your students how to use AppyPie, or you can teach your students to teach themselves how to use AppyPie. In that case, you are not giving them expert knowledge. What you are doing is guiding them towards that expert knowledge. So you see, you as an educator, your role has become more and more flexible, because what you're actually doing is you're more of a coach than you are a direct teacher of an expert subject. One more thing, and that is research-based learning for students and educators. This is for really all of us. These are the things that there are lists and lists and lists of what people think is important to be able to undertake something on your own. In other words, what you see, these 15 points could be put in different ways. You could include more points. You can make less points. It doesn't really matter. I just chose this particular one. It was given by a particular university. And these are the basic guidelines of how to create a project. The ones that you see in italics, those are based on written projects, whereas the other ones are applicable to all projects. So what are they? Define and articulate a research question. That's your main thought. That would be the nature of your startup company. Identify possible sources of information and as many types of formats. That means doing the research into everything that you're going to require to make your startup. You should judge the scope of your project. How far do you want this project to go? How big is it? How small is it? It's like trying to decide what's going to be the subject of my thesis topic. But you spend time and months and months thinking, oh, it should be this is too general, it's too big. Then you reduce it and you say, yeah, this is still too big. I have to include so many things, so I make it even smaller. So what you're always doing is you're judging how big or how small your idea is. Leave out 4, because that's for written project. Then you say, how am I going to do this? Am I going to interview other people to find out how they did it? Am I going to use surveys? What are my research tools? What are my databases? What are my websites? And that is all just sitting on the internet. People don't realize this, but the whole of human knowledge is now sitting on the internet. And you can access it, a good 95%, without paying a dime. Then what do? You plan your research project. What does that mean? It means, there's your project management. You have to decide how you're going to structure, the structure of the project and how it's going to work. Then you have to find the information using a variety of methods, which you assimilate, and then you use whatever you need and throw away what you don't need. Then you are continuously refining, because as I learned in doing this, you have to refine and you have to change your strategy as you're going along. Because remember, doing a startup company is all new. You have no idea where you're going. So as you go, you learn. You have to write and organize useful notes and to keep track of sources. That applies to any project. All the materials you have to keep because you may want to go back to them, you may want to reuse them. You also have to evaluate the sources. How good are your sources? Are you creating the stuff that you want to create in the best possible way? Then you have to synthesize, analyze, integrate information, sources, and prior knowledge. All of these things so far, I think you're beginning to see, all fit in perfectly into a cooperative learning thing, because you can either reach all of these things through expert, through thinking and sharing, and through voting. All of these things, each of them can, you can use different strategies or different models of cooperative learning to achieve all of these things. So, why do you want to adopt cooperative learning? First of all, the course would be a rare educational experience in which knowledge acquired does not remain an intellectual exercise in theory, but is transformed into a functional entity that may improve the financial lot and career opportunities for many musicians. Because you don't think about this, but when they started Earmaster many years ago, I think it was 1990, the first one came out in 1996 or something like that. These people, the small group of people that started Earmaster, in fact, I think with Earmaster, it was only 2 original founders. They changed their lives. They became multimillionaires, but they also changed the lives of countless students who are having to do ear training in the best possible way. So it not only changes the financial lot, it also creates new things. As Chara said this morning, the innovation. You may find, for example, there is one part of the Earmaster program that you can develop because you know that the Earmaster gives it up to a certain point, but goes no further. So you may want to create your own branch of Earmaster and call it something else. The search for the materials required to provide for a music startup infrastructure has revealed that there exists an abundance of high quality materials, books, papers, theses, videos, apps, you name it, on a myriad subjects that are both readily available and easily accessible by all who may not be expert on subjects that lie outside of their musical realm. I will show you in a minute what I'm talking about indirectly. The present generation of music students, the ones that we have, even if on a superficial level, much experience with all that technology has to offer. As you know, your younger generation people are already pretty good at this technology stuff. If you give them something, they learn it much quicker than I do anyway. In fact, I have most of my students helping me with really basic things all the time. They need only guidance in deepening and directing their technological know-how in beneficial directions. The same can be said of the present generation of instructors who can redirect their academic and technological skills in the preparation of a course that sits well within their purview. What does that mean? Before we did the Omega project, which was finished, I think, also in 2014, my wife and I had zero experience of entrepreneurship. Well, my wife had a better experience. I had zero experience of entrepreneurship. But by the time we finished creating the book on entrepreneurship, and we had gone through the boot camp of learning how to teach the stuff, we realized that we could teach stuff that we were not experts in. The difference between 2014 and 2020 is huge, because that stuff has become even easier to understand. So this is also made possible by the fact of the role of the instructor in the cooperative learning model is more one of a guide rather than an expert. In the study that I did, it actually showed that with 6 months of basic training in any field that we are thinking about for these startups, anybody can become a pretty good expert of all of this stuff, or even just a few of these things. I will give you an example. I've been thinking about setting up my own website for many years, and I've never done it because I always thought, oh my God, now I have to learn this and I have to learn basic coding and blah, blah, blah. Now I can do it. I spent $69 on a thing called Doodly or Doodle. And now I learned how to use the thing in the space of about a week. I could actually make my own cartoons now if I wanted to, which is what I intend to do on the website. For instructional videos, you can learn literally in a week how to make a cartoon. You don't necessarily have to be a coder anymore. You don't have to be a graphics person anymore. You can actually do the templates that they have are so vast. You can just make up your own stories. You can make up your own educational videos. You can do anything you want. The technology is amazing. So, experts in the subject that cannot be taught by the principal instructor, of course, may be offered on occasion by relevant experts. If you feel that certain things just cannot be taught, for example, law, you have to, for example, for law, there's no getting around the fact that we cannot know even the local laws where we live. So what do? You get a lawyer from your town that knows about the local laws, that knows about the state laws, and you invite them to give an expert lecture on the law so that your students understand the basic concepts and then can go and do their own research on it. But they have a good founding on it, of it before they even start. It follows that the line of education is economically advantageous to institutions because they need not hire extraneous staff. That's what I'm saying. You can actually teach your music teachers to do things other than teach the instrument that they're normally teaching. They can do all kinds of other things. It would also augment the prestige of the institution that adopts the course because it would be indicative of the school's ability to innovate. And I think we had a lot of innovation this morning, but innovation in our realm, and I saw that with the adoption of entrepreneurial learning by different universities. The ones that were there first became really famous and everybody's looking towards them. And because they have first mover advantage, the people are now, students are starting to ask, yeah, they have a great violin teacher as well, but what else are they going to teach me? So even from the students' perspective, students are becoming more and more discerning. And it was revealed that in a thesis that I read, that is what student wants. They lament the fact that nobody teaches them something as simple as writing a CV, writing a cover letter, promoting themselves, creating their own websites, doing any of these things. Because as music teachers, we've never ever really thought about it. Because we're just like our students who are practicing 9 hours a day in a room. What were we doing? We are teaching 9 hours a day and performing, either in orchestras or as soloists or whatever. That is it. We have a very restricted mindset in terms of music, but we're not the only ones. Because if you go to any other profession, it's the same thing. Engineers are busy, techies are busy only doing writing programs. A lot of really amazing tech guys guys have really awful lives because they spend most of their life in some basement coming up with the most extraordinary stuff. Finally, the research project-based learning, one that I taught before, is so compatible with cooperative learning model, teaches students how to experience the learning process as a process. I don't know about you, but a lot of our learning has to do with just memory and regurgitation of things. Not about the process itself, because it is in the learning process that we are also learning how to create a company. The company itself becomes the learning process. If you understand and if you manage to bring all these sides together. So the benefits of this opens new pathways to new ways of thinking and creating. Now, with my study, what I did was, okay, I'm a teacher, and Paolo is saying all these amazing things, but how does he back it up? So what I did was, I took a whole host of subjects. I couldn't do all of them, but I did a good amount of them. And what I did was, I went and I got all the books that I could on media marketing, social media marketing, right? So what I did was, I took the name of the book, the author, when it was published, so forth and so on. It gives Google Books gives a description, a short description of what the book is. And what I did was, I provided a link that theoretically, if you go onto it and you just click it, there's your book. And then you can skim through the book. Can you all see the book?
No, we cannot. You would need to change your share screen to show us.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. New share screen. I clicked on that. Oh, I see. I clicked on hold on a second. There we go. I clicked on the link that I put under the description, and this brought up the book. Here is the book.
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I did exactly the same. Oh dear, I stopped the whole share. One second.
Paolo, it's not much time left. I'm sorry. And a lot of people have questions. Sorry. They can always go back to the PowerPoint and click on the links, and they can just take their time to.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you. It was fantastic, but I think that there are people that would like to ask questions, and we don't have much time. So I'm afraid
I have 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was just very clear, fantastic, easy to follow, and I think for most of us some new information. So I would like to give the floor to Maria, that I think she has a question, or if you would like me to read it. Do you have your method of keeping and tracking your sources of various formats? She says.
Yeah. Oh, is that me? Yes, I do. Thank goodness I wrote a thesis, and I've written a couple of books. And one thing is I've learned is whatever it is that I find that is relevant to anything that I do in terms of writing, in my case, I make a folder for it and I put it in there. And I sort things out in categories, really. It's like finding, I don't know, musical examples for a book. I go and I get the music, I study the music, and then I say, okay, this is relevant, this is not relevant, or this part of the music is, I take it, I snip it out, I put it in a folder, and then I directly correlate everything that I have. It's really just organizing your information into different slots. And I keep everything. I keep absolutely everything.
Okay, thank you. So Raffaele asks, if the next frontier is to have a cooperative teachers team performing in a cooperative learning environment?
What do you mean a cooperative teachers team? Sorry, Rafaela, what do you mean by a cooperative teacher team?
Well, I think he will,
Ah, okay.
we'll go back to this, I think. So the next one is Sarah. I think Sarah Meltzer, if you would like to add
Yes,
this.
so thank you very much for this presentation. It was really mind-blowing and extremely interesting. I'm going to ask a question which is like very provocative on the positive way, of course. How come that generations of outstanding musicians, world acclaimed musicians, artists in all the fields, they could have, let's say, practice, learn, study without all of these things? It seems like we are, with the technology that we are advancing and we are progressing, we are like losing our basic, let's say, skills to learn as others learned hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. And we have got to this modern world that we need to have this research methods and how to put this, let's say, millennium students, everybody knows what it is, that they cannot, they have all these disorders of discipline things, and they cannot stay and understand and think. And we need to research, like, to invent the world from the beginning.
Okay. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a really, one of my favorite examples. I could choose either Robert Schumann or Baptiste Lully or Haydn for that matter. But my favorite example really is Beethoven. Beethoven, we often think of as this crazy, genius guy who made these unbelievable artworks, was an unbelievable performer, did all of these things while he was deaf and everything. And we forget that he was one of the most amazing entrepreneurs of all times. He was actually a concert agent. He created concert series. He learned how to deal with the entire publishing world. He was at the onset of all of it. He was actually telling publishers what to do. And he was actually teaching them their job. If we think about Schumann, unbelievable musician. Before him, there were no music journals. He came along with his crazy ideas, and voila, he started basically the music journal. It didn't exist before, and he became a published author. He became a music critic. He became all kinds. He learned how to self-publish. He created his own publishing house. So you say, oh, well, these guys, their intellect is just so superior to ours that they can do multiple things. The beauty of technology is that us ordinary people can actually also do multiple things without having the monstrous capacities that these other guys had. Because I'm pretty sure that if Beethoven or Bach, for that matter, would have had all of these things, I think for them it would have been like second nature. I'm sure they would have learned how to use it, because whether you like it or not, they like to self-promote because they had gigantic egos. They wanted their music to be heard everywhere. If Beethoven had the internet, why, he would have gone berserk. He would have learned how to use it, and he would have had his symphony play the whole world over while he was still alive. Unfortunately, there was no scaling in those days. And if you think also, like, for example, Bach, he wrote in his Leipzig period, he wrote a cantata a week. He had to write the whole cantata and had his whole family copy parts. He had to bring together the orchestra. So he was the composer, he was the conductor, he was the script writer, he was a part writer, He was an organizer. We don't think of these things, but these guys did all of this while doing all this other crazy stuff that they did and perform and compose. Every time I look at Bach, I go, oh my God, how did this man even do this? But he did. He was doing all sorts of non-musical things. To have his music performed in a small church in Leipzig and nobody else knew about it. No one knew about it, but he did.
Great. Thank you, Paolo. I would like to just edit Rafaela's question that I think he meant, what if several teachers acting and teaching in the same space? So that's what he meant as learning and teaching environment. What do you think about it?
Okay, I can tell you this much. One of the papers that I wrote was really one of the papers that I read for this particular study had a bunch of teachers, school teachers, undergo a 6-month cooperative learning course about teaching. And they basically learned a whole bunch of new things that they didn't know before, but each teacher was especially chosen from different subject fields so that they all had an area of expertise. But then what actually happened is that they all learned from each other and started to integrate the knowledge that they had gained from other teachers as a cooperative learning group of people, and then they brought it to their own students. If that is what he means, I think. I'm not sure, but
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let me see if I'm forgetting anything. I think Malgorzata, would you like to say something? I think you're just basically saying that is not a new concept. Cooperative learning, yes and no. I think for some of us it's not, some of us it is. We might be giving a different name, you said, but sure, we've been using it. Maybe some of us, again, without being aware of it, we have been, or other ways. But thank you for your comment on clear explanation of this concept by Paolo, which I agree with you. And you also added later that Handel was also a great entrepreneur. Yes,
absolutely.
You're right again. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And many others. And if any of you can think of any others, I mean, please join. Yes, definitely.
Can I just?
Yes, please, yes.
In a little bit. Thank you very much. I once again, I just want to thank Paolo very much for this, neat and clear explanation of this concept of cooperative learning, and for bringing to our attention again the fact that, having other jobs on the side for great musicians is not a new phenomenon. No. Sometimes, I mean, when I'm working with my students, I keep to reminding them that let's say multiple jobs in music professions is not a new phenomenon. No. And I think it's quite important to be aware of this fact that it's not the hardship of our times. It's somehow inherent into the musicians' jobs, and I think that I'm really, really grateful that Paolo has brought up to our attention again. Exactly as Payam, you are reminding the concept of portfolio careers and protean careers as well. That has been around this concept of having changing musicians' jobs, not only having multiple jobs at the same time, but just changing roles in what is so typical for the so-called protean careers. So yes, my comment was just about that it's nothing, that it's not new at all. And also going back to the cooperative learning concept, I think that many of us, especially those of us who work in the conservatoire context, but in non-strictly music subjects, and I'm just one of those persons, we have been exercising this concept of cooperative learning for some time already. You work with several students at a time. You just put them into groups, and I really liked, like Paolo explained, how you can form the groups, that it can be based on sort of focus and expertise, but it can be also mixed and so on. I think it's really worth reminding ourselves that it really works quite well. So thank you once again. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to say anything else? More questions? We still have some time. Carla, yes.
Yeah, Paolo, even if I heard some part of your presentation in our meeting and News Map meeting, really, I appreciate all the work in this hour, really. Thank you so much. And I was reflecting, about that now we consider a binomial learning, teaching, not two separating things. And so maybe, do you think that, in a few, or maybe in a, really in a few years, we can consider a cooperative learning teaching, environment, that we are all, we will have all the responsibility to build, that is not only the cooperative learning, but cooperative learning teaching all together. What do you think?
Well, that goes directly to what I was saying about the fact that in this particular case, learning teaching just depends on where do you want to apply it and to whom do you want to apply it. So yeah, you can learn anything irrespective of whether you're a teacher or a student. So that's the aim of this part of the project. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen like in a few years. This is going to actually be one of the outcomes of this News and Map project.
Yes, of course.
It's going to be the fact that, hey, wait a minute, as a teacher, I can learn to teach students who can learn to teach. It's just a chain.
Yeah, it's a rule. It's a playing role in the same.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. So, well, we're almost done. If you would like to take a look at the presentation, we have it on the AEC project training website, and you're always welcome to email Paolo with more questions and ideas if you have. And this was another great session. Great to have you. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, Paolo, for a great presentation. I'm
Thank you.
honored to moderate it, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully tomorrow morning. And have a wonderful evening. Take care.